Okay, now today's lesson, I think because we already started lesson 12 yesterday, and there's quite a lot we've got to cover. We can perhaps start a little bit of lesson 13 as well if we have time. So I think we just spoken about this yesterday. We were talking about the fact that Metaplex has introduced a standard for the all the extra data that we need for NFTs that make the whole process match what we actually want to do with NFTs. That makes a lot more sense. And this is this is details of the off-chain data, and we spoke through that. You got some examples there. Other things you may want to do as well is to run an auction of your NFTs. It's quite common. The from the Metaplex tool, I think there's only English auctions available at the moment. Um, and yeah, but there's the usual functionality you'd expect. Yeah, being able to bid and cancel bids, etc. Um, One point, this is the details of the data within the auction account. So I think all of that makes sense. The one that perhaps is uh, maybe not obvious, the end auction gap. This is to do with the fact that if the auction is uh, proceeding, is very close, but it's coming to an end, you may not want to end it exactly at that point if it's obvious that there's multiple people who are bidding against each other. So what may be better is if you have a gap between bids that has to happen before the auction can end, which then really signals that people have probably decided that they're going to stop bidding. So that's what the end auction gap is about. Okay. Other things, we've got a possibility of a token vault as well. And this also allows for fractionalization of an NFT, which I mentioned that possibility earlier, the idea that we're not restricting an NFT uh, to be owned by one person. We could split that out. So that's the idea with that. There are further tools as well. This one helps with creating NFTs, the Sol tools. Marketplaces, I think these are probably well known. I just got some screenshots from some a while ago. These probably a little bit old, but uh, yeah, they all do pretty much the same type of thing and allow you to advertise your collections, etc., and sell those. One point I should say about NFTs generally that was really brought home to me by a colleague who had got a reasonably good idea for an NFT collection, and he'd spent a long time sort of creating the NFTs, getting the collection built. And then just as it was finished and he was launching it, he realized that actually this was at the time when NFTs were much more popular, I think. But he realized that actually he was never going to sell very many because his offering, his collection, was just one of so many others that it was just going to be drowned out and probably never seen. So it does illustrate the fact that the technical side, you certainly obviously need that, but also you're going to need a marketing side as well to let people know about the NFTs that you have created. Okay. Yeah, so that's marketplaces. Okay, I'll just mention inscriptions fairly quickly because I think they are not as popular or widely used as they were about a year ago. They had a great increase in popularity when they were introduced, but I think the interest in them has dropped off. But it comes down to or brings into question the where we are storing data for our NFTs, and also uh, what we can potentially do with chains like Bitcoin that obviously are much more limited in what we can do, and they don't offer the same kind of functionality as something like Solana or Ethereum. And this idea of inscriptions came out of Bitcoin, where they'd worked out a mechanism by which to put NFT-like objects onto the chain. But when as part of doing that, the actual data, all of the data was going to be on chain. So quite different to the idea we've had with Solana, where we split it out and we put most of the data, or the in terms of size anyway, we put most of it off chain. So this was the idea then that you would put everything on chain, and it is done in a certain way where you're putting data into transactions. Uh, it started out on Bitcoin with the idea of ordinals, and uh, then it spread amongst other chains. Other chains sort of copied that kind of idea, and it became quite popular for a while. So you got similar ideas. You can see them. Yeah, so here's details on Ethereum. This shows you, yeah, this is a number of change on the Ethereum ecosystem, but it gives you an idea of the sudden popularity of inscriptions and the effect that that had on transaction count, the volume of transactions. So this was the end of 2023, and you can see there was massive spikes on a lot of chains caused by the fact that people were using this for inscriptions. Um, the fact that then data is put into the transaction, then that relies means you need third parties to index data. So you are able to get data, but it's not it's less straightforward than in a normal NFT. Um, so uh, they also became popular in Solana as well, and about the end of 2023, there was lots going on. You got almost 300,000 minted in one day. Uh, Again, there were people copying ideas from Bitcoin where they they had this standard, the BRC-20 standard, and then that inspired this the SPL-20 standard to do something similar. Um, the As I say, the data is held uh, in transactions, but it may be that may have to happen over multiple transactions if there's a lot of data needed. Um, I can't remember now the intricacies of the difference between the SPL token and creating an inscription, but there's some details there and some links if you want to look into it more. Um, you can see here that there is minting going on, and you're specifying that a certain amount is going to be minted, and you're specifying the IDs of these things, and that's really how it ties into the NFT idea, that the fact that they've got IDs as well. Um, so you would end up with something like this, where this has ID 308243, for example. Other points about it here, you've got the concept of it being mutable or immutable, so that's something that can be set as well, and also the concept of royalties. Um, yeah, it's probably better reading the articles who explain better than I can the difference between the the different standards and the sort of basic inscriptions. I think these are not very widely used now. I think it was very much popular 18 months ago, but the interest in this has dwindled somewhat. It's true that of course if you're doing this, then you're storing things on chain. So this makes these things relatively expensive. Or perhaps look at it another way, it means your whatever it is you're associating with the NFT, if you've got some type of asset, that has to be relatively small. So that's how it's quite different from the standard way of doing NFTs. But there are other tools as well to help you with this. This one, SoulScribe, can help you create them. And then there are tools from Metaplex as well. We've got the MPL inscriptions that will help you create these. This next one, this is from an alternative to Metaplex called Libreplex. And this just shows, this is just a screenshot from some inscriptions being created. And you can see the different numbers that they have here in for this particular collection. They all have unique numbers, and yeah, you could buy those. There's details here if you want to try it out. I would suggest, yeah, use one of these tools. Um, in order to do it, you need to create an NFT initially, and then you can uh, inscribe on that, create the inscriptions on top of that. The the cost of that, as I say, can be quite large because if you're storing things on chain, so uh, it means really that people are likely to just have very small items being used in the NFT. Um, this bridge, I don't know. Yeah, I don't know if this is still available. You need to check that, but it's a way of doing conversions between this new standard, the SPL20 standard, and regular SPL tokens. But having said that, it did have for a while. It had a very large effect on Solana, and the fact that we had a massive amount of transactions meant that the a lot of Sol was burnt as part of the fees, and that put a deflationary pressure on Sol, which led to it increasing in price quite considerably. You can see there it's gone up by about a quarter within a month. So uh, that's quite impressive. Yeah, from that point of view. Um, there we go. Yeah, so that's just a brief mention of inscriptions. I don't know if people are still interested in these, which is why I didn't want to spend much time on it. Uh, but yeah, at one point it was a hot topic. Okay, so that was the end of the first the introduction to NFTs. What I'll do is I'll go on to the lesson 13 notes where we've got more details of some of the tools you can use. And here I'm going back to the standard NFT, the standard idea of how you will store the digital asset off chain. So some of the tools you can use, and I should say as well, these do change quite regularly. So please do check the documentation because the tools do change quite a lot. Um, so Candy Machine. So this is a tool to help you really with the whole process uh, of selling an NFT, and so it allows you to accept payment in sort of standard tokens there. Um, it helps you with the idea of launching your tokens as well. So it allows you to set dates when that's going to happen and work out ahead of time what the amount you're going to mint, etc. There's some protection against bots if you're worried, and yeah, just general things to make sure it goes smoothly and isn't exploited by people using bots. Uh, if you want to, you can restrict the minting to a certain set of addresses. You can also set up the minting in different ways. So you can set up groups to mint in different ways to have different rules about how it's going to happen. Um, and yeah, there's some verification that can be done by your users as well. So in order to get it going, you need to create this thing called the Candy Machine and then configure it with all of the details about the launch that you want. You need to uh, give it details of the what you're going to want, what you're going to mint, sorry, and then you can actually do the minting, and then at the end it can clean up uh, everything. I mentioned these things, these candy guards. These uh, it's perhaps more than the idea of a guard. It's really extensions, extra features that they add to the candy machine to give extra functionality with your launch. So um, you can specify different payments and where the payment's going to go. You can set dates about this so that minting can only happen after a certain time. You can put limits on the minting. Um, and yeah, you've got this thing that will help you against bots as well. The when you're doing this, you can see from this you need to set up various items. So certain configuration. The You can see here we've got the idea of guards being set up with some values. Then you can you can set up different addresses that will receive the assets. Um, yeah, and then uh, you can see this is the kind of the flow that happens based on that. Okay. Um, there is a CLI to be used with this as well. If you want to use that, here's the details of how to install it. This is a screenshot from what you'll see once you've installed it. So this allows you to set up one of these candy machines that will then be configured and then do the launch for you. They do have a lot of default settings, of course, so you it's quite straightforward to set them up. As always, when you're doing this, you'll need a key pair. So if you don't have that set up, there's details here of how to set up a file system key pair. But once you've done that, you need to get your assets sorted out. So uh, this is a you can create a directory for where the assets will be placed. You also then, along with the actual digital assets, you will need some JSON files to for the metadata for those assets. There's examples in the repo, but I've got some details here. So this, I don't know if I've got the a picture for this. Um, no, I don't think I have. But this is an example of a an NFT that is going to be minted. It's sort of like a cartoon crab in a room, and there's going to be a collection of these. All of these have all of the items in the collection have slightly different attributes. So for one here, the this first one, then you're saying it has a lamp, it has a red chair, it has a blue book, and then you've got an image for that. So what you can do is add your assets, so all of the images that you're going to want to use, and then within the JSON file, you can fill in the details for all of the assets, saying what attributes they have. Okay. Once you've got all that set up, then you can uh, use this command line to uh, to set up the configuration, and it takes you through a number of choices. It's very helpful, and it can provide defaults, but it will then set up a config file which looks like something like this, where you've got details of the price that you're going to be charging, the number of items that are available, details about the who you are, the creator, um, and if that's shared between people, the percentage. Uh, Also, the details of the launch date, the end date. Yeah, well, the things that I mentioned before, really. We also have, you can put in details here of where things are being stored as well, if that's applicable. Um, when you do that, you should end up with something that looks like this. So we've got the PNG files here, the pictures for each item, and then associated with that, we've got a JSON file to provide the metadata for that item. And then we've got a collection picture and a collection JSON file for the whole collection. Okay. So that's setting up all of the configuration. Once you've done that, then you can create the machine by doing sugar launch, and that will uh, set up the machine and deploy it. And you can do sugar mint, um, which will get that deployed and ready to mint starting at the correct time. And then once you're finished with all of that, you can do sugar withdraw to clean everything up. It also has code to help create a UI for you as well, so you can do that. When you need to associate that with a machine ID. So when you create a candy machine, it creates an ID. So you can do sugar show to give you that, and then you need to put that in a N file. But the default code that you've got here, the front end, you can run that along with the ID that you've added to the N file, and then that should associate that with the correct candy machine. Okay. So that's quite a simple way of giving you a UI for that. If you want to do more complex things or interact more in a more detailed way, there's a JavaScript SDK available, also Rust as well. And I've got links there to a guide as well for you for how to use the SDK. Now, so that's the candy machine. Something else that you may find useful, another tool you may find useful is called Gumdrop, which helps you with creating an airdrop for your NFTs if you're going to do that rather than just a sort of straightforward launch. Then there's the Gumdrop tool that should help you with that. Okay. So that's really talking about the technical side and some of the tools that are available. These particular ones are available from Metaplex. Other things to think about though, of course, this could end up being quite expensive, depending on the price of Sol and also where you are storing the assets. So you do need to get a feel for that before you launch all of this. Um, Also, as I said, the marketing is very important because otherwise it'll just get lost amongst all of the other collections that are being launched. So you will need to have a strategy around that and yeah, do that. You also need to think about things like communities, whether are you going to set up a community around the particular asset or your particular collection. That could be a way to ensure that it has some longevity. Um, Also, then you need to think about the royalties and whether you're going to include royalties for when things are being sold on. Should royalties go back to the original creator? Okay. Now, on a different note, there's a point about the permanence, and this is to do with the fact that when people buy an NFT, they tend to assume that then they have complete control over that, and that the asset they have is not going to change in any way. Um, but that's not necessarily true, and you can make the NFTs mutable. And what this means is that you could buy an NFT which is linked to a particular digital asset, but then later on that link could be changed to be linking to something else, a different asset. And that's, I mean, that sounds like that's something malicious, but it's not necessarily the case. There are use cases for that. There are genuine use cases where that might be useful, as I sort of say here, where perhaps you've got a game character and it starts off with a particular image and particular attributes. and then over time that changes. So you want to be able to update the image that is involved with that NFT and update the attributes, etc. So there can be valid reasons to do that. I think the important thing to say is that you just need to be very transparent about this. So to make sure that if people are buying your NFT, they know exactly what they're getting and whether it is going to potentially change. Okay. Um, this, the way that that change happens, if you are updating, it is relatively easy to do that, an update on the blockchain side. For the file storage systems, they tend to be more immutable. It's the address that you get in a file storage system for a particular file is effectively the hash of the contents of the file. So it's if you change the content of the file, that will give a different address. So um, you you also need to think about that as well and what's going to happen to the old data. But as I say, the important thing is to be transparent about this and make sure that people understand what the rules are. Okay, so Metaplex really was, I think, the first sort of large project that was providing these tools, and it became very popular. And I think it still is very popular and still under development. But a an alternative to it did come out, which is Libreplex. So I've got some screenshots uh, from their website. Um, they they've got a slightly different emphasis, and I think they've been positioning themselves as an alternative and to Metaplex and looking at the way that Metaplex does things and maybe going in a slightly different direction. Um, Here's a chart, so yeah, it's not very clear, I'm afraid, but to give you an idea of the feature comparison, of course, this was created by Libreplex, so they're emphasizing the points that are important to them. But yeah, they really, I think, presented themselves more as more open. The idea of the open license, more community driven, and um, allowing community governance. This does tie in with ideas that have been around in DeFi for a while, the idea of fair launch as well, where there has been pushback to the way that some tokens were launched. In the early days of tokens being launched, they were often tokens would be set aside for founders and for VCs, etc. And there would be some kind of pre-sale where those would be allocated to certain accounts, and then later on, the general public would be allowed to buy tokens. And then there was a movement against that, saying that there should be more of a fair launch, and the projects doing that tended to build a community around the token, and then on launch it would be made available to everyone. There wouldn't be any sort of whitelisting of addresses or any possibility of getting tokens ahead of time. So I think that's something that Leverplex have also continued as well. Um, Also, they've got this idea of the things being fee free as well, of having a straightforward license. Um, some of this, I think, actually they introduced some features. I think Metaplex are also introducing these as well. So this is probably uh, not no longer true. For example, the token 2022. I think also is something that Metaplex is now supporting. They certainly also support inscriptions, etc. So these things, as one platform introduces something, it's probably going to get picked up by the other platform as well. Um, yeah, there's more details there about them if you want to have a look and uh, compare the two. Uh, yeah, it's worthwhile checking them out before you decide which one you want to use if you're going to use some of the tools as well. Um, the we haven't really spoken about, yeah, we haven't spoken about Token 2022. But I can mention it quickly here because uh, I suppose we can sort of talk about its relevance to NFTs. The idea behind this or it's also called token extensions. The idea behind it was that the original token program was limited. Obviously, it was written a long time ago, but there were extra pieces of functionality that people would like. And so the Token 2022 program was designed to introduce these extra features. And you can see some of those here. I got details for later on about the program, so I won't go through all of them, but just to mention some of them where they are relevant to NFTs, the idea of transfer fees helps with royalties. So this is if you transfer a token, then a fee can be charged for that. So that can be used for royalties. Um, Oh yeah, one idea, at one point again, this is something that became quite popular, and I think there are use cases for this. Is the idea of the soul-bound token. So this is where we have a token that once it is uh, issued to someone, once it is owned by someone, then it cannot be transferred. So there's some interesting ideas around that and around the fact that you can show that ownership of something for a while, and it sort of can tie into identity, those kind of ideas. Um, yeah, metadata, obviously that's very important for NFTs as well, so that certainly helps there. Um, yeah, we'll talk about the other items when we talk about Token 2022. Uh, so if you want to use Libreplex, they also have SDK as well. So this allows you to use their tools programmatically. Um, some details here of how to install that. Uh, this is using using Anchor. Um, so yeah, installing it and creating a collection, etc. So if you want some examples, uh, yeah, you've got some there. Okay, let me move on. So something that came out, hmm, don't know, maybe a couple of years ago, maybe a little bit before then, was the idea of X NFTs. And this, the X stands for executable, and it's it's really a way that you can it adds sort of a friendly um, interface to your application. It allows you to to create items that will be kept in a wallet, but actually you can execute these items. So you can interact with particular applications through these items. They do require a special wallet for that. So there was a special wallet built called Backpack to hold these special types of NFTs. And yeah, the idea is that if you build a dApp, then you can create an XNFT for that, which will then provide a nice, easy way for your users to interact with that. So one example you got here, Mango, the you could use that, you could have that in your wallet and then use that to then interact with the Mango markets and do trading or whatever from there. So it's it came out. I don't know how whether this is still popular at all. I think maybe there are other things may have overtaken this a little bit, but certainly it was possible. You can see actually the fact that I've got FTX in there shows you gives you an idea of how old this is or when it was invented. Okay. Um, I think I'll just talk about compressed NFTs and then we'll maybe finish. But compressed NFTs are an important idea because the the process of creating a collection, if you particularly if you have a large number of NFTs that you want to mint, could end up being quite expensive. Um, even even if you're storing the assets off chain, as is the common approach, it can still be quite expensive just in terms of the data that is still kept on chain. You still have some of that the metadata on chain in the normal approach, and so that can end up being quite expensive if you've got lots of NFTs that you're creating. So uh, an alternative approach, which is kind of, I suppose, go the opposite way to inscriptions, is to move even more data off chain. So we see with the standard kind of approach, we've got the assets themselves and some metadata about the assets held off chain, but still some metadata is on chain. With compressed NFTs, they move even more metadata off chain. And the way that that can work is that they use special data structures to hold that. They can compress data as well, but that can also be made available for consensus. So the the point of having things on chain is that you can come to consensus about that state. So if you move things off chain, then that it gives the possibility that things that there could be fraud or people could misrepresent things, and there wouldn't be agreement about the data. So we do need some way to make sure that this data is still correct and accurate and there is agreement about it. So to help with this, there's this tool called Bubblegum, which allows you to create these special trees holding details of the NFT. They also rely on third-party services as well to do some indexing of the data that is off-chain. But it does mean that you can create large collections much more cheaply. Uh, if you want to do that, what you need is to set up a special data structure, this concurrent Merkle tree, which there is an SDK for that. And then you mint the compressed NFTs into that tree, along with the owner's address. Uh, Now, that means then that the details of that NFT and its owner is no longer on chain. So we do have to do more to if we're trying to transfer the NFT, for example. So what has to happen if you want to transfer an NFT is that you need to get a proof that 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 particular piece of data exists in the tree. Specifically, that particular NFT then is owned or has a particular owner, and that exists in the tree. So you have to create this and then create or get that data and then create a proof from it. But these third-party indexing services are going to help with this because they can take this off-chain data uh, and manipulate it. They um, and of course it's off-chain, so it's not costing the same there. Uh, yeah, and then you can create transfer instructions which will then update the off-chain data as well. All right. So yeah, we're about halfway through, so I think we'll stop there because we are a little bit ahead here. We're on lesson 13 now, so I'm going to finish. But the last point here, number three, the constraints. This is about the constraints that you can specify in the context that you have. So have a think about those. There are links to the possibilities for that in the notes. I think a couple of days ago we went through the full list of um, what is available to you when you're setting up uh, the context, etc. So you can have a look at that. and hopefully choose something appropriate. All right, and then if you have time, have a look at some issues around security. We'll be talking about security next week, so it's worthwhile having a read about that. Thanks, everyone. I'll see you soon.